Lena Martinez stared at her reflection in the small, cracked mirror of the community bathroom. The silver flecks in her eyes seemed brighter today, catching the harsh, fluorescent light. 3 years alone in an escape pod had changed her in ways that went beyond the obvious physical modifications. The experimental cryogenics and emergency medical nanites had kept her alive, but they had also made her different from everyone else. She splashed water on her face and straightened her worn jacket. The colony of New Frontier was supposed to be a place of new beginnings, but for Lena, it had been nothing but closed doors and suspicious glances. After 2 months of trying and failing to find work that matched her skills as a scientist and former military engineer, she had made a choice that once would have seemed beneath her. She had registered with a matchmaking service. The thought made her stomach clench, but her options were running out along with her credits. New Frontier needed strong, capable people to help build the colony, but they wanted normal humans, not whatever she had become. Outside, the settlement bustled with morning activity. New Frontier's main street was a mix of prefabricated buildings and newer structures made from local materials. Dust kicked up from the unpaved roads as supply trucks moved between warehouses. Lena kept her head down as she walked, ignoring the stares from colonists who had already heard rumors about the abandoned woman who had survived alone in space. The matchmaking office was housed in a small building with a cheerful sign that seemed out of place against the utilitarian surroundings. Lena paused outside, taking a deep breath before pushing open the door. Susan Baker, the matchmaker, looked up from her computer terminal with a practiced smile that faltered slightly when she recognized Lena. "Ms. Martinez, good morning," Susan said, shuffling some papers on her desk. "Please have a seat." Lena sat stiffly in the chair across from Susan. The matchmaker's office was decorated with pictures of happy couples and families, all of them looking normal, healthy, and completely human. "I've reviewed your application," Susan began, not quite meeting Lena's eyes. "And I want to be honest with you. I'm having trouble finding suitable matches." "Because of my background," Lena said, flatly. It wasn't a question. Susan nodded, her discomfort obvious. "Our clients on New Frontier have specific requirements. They want partners who can help build a future here, who can—" She hesitated. "Who can have children," Lena finished for her, "who are fully human." "That's not exactly what I meant," Susan protested weakly, but her expression said otherwise. "Your modifications are extensive. The medical scans you provided show significant changes to your cellular structure, your muscle density, even your brain chemistry. And then there's your history. 3 years alone in space," Lena said. "That makes people uncomfortable, doesn't it? They wonder if I'm still right in the head." Susan didn't deny it. "The colonists here are practical people, Ms. Martinez. They want predictable partners with traditional values. Your military background is also a concern for some. Many of our settlers came to New Frontier to escape Earth's conflicts." Lena felt a flare of anger but pushed it down. Getting emotional wouldn't help her case. "I understand their concerns, but I'm still human where it counts. I need this, Ms. Baker. I'm running out of options." The matchmaker hesitated, then pulled up a file on her screen. "There is one possibility. We have a few clients who live in the most remote regions, men who run ranches or mining operations far from the settlement. Their requirements are less strict." "You mean they're desperate?" Lena said bluntly. Susan winced. "I wouldn't put it that way. These are hardworking men who need capable partners. They're just in locations where few people are willing to go." She turned the screen so Lena could see. "This is Alan Cooper. He runs a mining operation in the northern mountains. The conditions are harsh, but the pay is good. He's looking for someone who can help manage the workers and—" "No," Lena interrupted, looking at the man's profile. Something in his eyes reminded her of officers she'd served under who enjoyed their power too much. "Not him." Susan sighed and scrolled to another profile. "Carl Freeman has a hydroponic farm on the Eastern Plateau. It's isolated, but the living conditions are better than most outlying operations." Lena studied the profile. The man looked kind enough, but the farm was tiny, struggling according to the financial information. She would be trading one form of desperation for another. I'll think about it, she said, though she had already decided against it. Susan closed the file and gave Lena a sympathetic look that felt patronizing. Ms. Martinez, I should prepare you for the possibility that we may not find a suitable match. New Frontier is still developing and its people are cautious about differences. You mean they're afraid of me? Lena said. They don't understand you, Susan corrected gently. Your experience is beyond anything most people can relate to, and your physical changes make them uncertain. Lena stood up abruptly. Thank you for your time, Ms. Baker. I'll check back next week. Of course, Susan said, relief evident in her voice. Perhaps something will come up. Outside, Lena blinked in the bright sunlight. The meeting had gone exactly as she had expected, but that didn't make the rejection hurt any less. She started walking without a clear destination, eventually finding herself at the edge of town where the settlement gave way to the wild landscape of New Frontier. The planet was beautiful in its own harsh way, with sprawling plains of tall blue-green, grass and distant mountains that caught the light of the system's twin suns. In the 3 months since her rescue, Lena had seen little of the planet beyond the main settlement. Perhaps it was time to change that. She was about to turn back when she noticed a dust cloud approaching from the distance. A ground vehicle was heading toward the settlement at high speed, bouncing over the uneven terrain with practiced ease. Lena stepped aside as it roared past her and skidded to a stop near the supply depot. The driver who jumped out was tall and weathered, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of the sky just before a storm. He moved with the confident stride of someone used to hard work and giving orders. Several workers from the depot hurried over to him, and Lena caught fragments of their conversation, something about supplies, cattle, and repairs needed before the dry season. Lena watched with mild interest as the man handed over a list to the depot manager. There was something compelling about him, a self-contained strength that reminded her of the better officers she had served with. As if sensing her gaze, he turned suddenly and looked directly at her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, he nodded once, a brief acknowledgement, before turning back to his business. Lena continued her walk back to her small rented room, unaware that their paths would soon cross again, or that the man she had just seen would offer her something no one else on New Frontier was willing to give, a chance. Jack Harlow was not a man who wasted time. He had come to New Frontier 5 years ago with nothing but a land grant and the clothes on his back. Now he owned the largest cattle ranch on the southern continent, 200,000 acres of tough terrain where his genetically modified longhorns grazed the blue-green native grasses. The animals were twice the size of earth cattle, with enhanced intelligence that made them both valuable and challenging to manage. Jack finished his business at the supply depot and walked toward the colony's administration building. He needed to file paperwork for water rights before heading to the only real bar in the settlement for a rare drink. Life on the ranch was hard and lonely, but he preferred it to the politics and gossip of town. As he approached the administration building, he noticed a woman walking out of the matchmaking office. Her straight back and measured steps caught his attention. She moved like a soldier, alert and ready, but it was the look on her face that made him pause, a mask of forced dignity covering genuine pain. Jack knew that look. He had worn it himself when he first arrived on New Frontier and found himself an outsider. He followed her with his eyes as she walked away, noting her muscular build and the strange silver flecks that seemed to shine in her eyes when she passed through a patch of sunlight. There was something different about her, something that set her apart from the other colonists. Jack continued to the administration office, but the woman stayed in his thoughts. After filing his paperwork, he found himself asking the clerk about her. That woman who just left the matchmaker's office. Who is she? The clerk, a gossipy man named Fred, leaned forward eagerly. That's Lena Martinez. They found her drifting in an escape pod 3 months back. Been alone in space for years, if you can believe it. Some kind of military scientist from what I hear. She looking for work? Jack asked casually. Fred snorted. Not many takers. Word is she's more machine than human now. Had to be modified just to survive out there. Medical nanites, enhanced muscles, who knows what else. Makes folks nervous. Jack nodded thoughtfully. A survivor. Someone who had faced the void and come back. He filed that information away as he finished his business and headed to the bar. The last call was crowded that evening, full of workers from the supply depot and farmers in town for trade day. Jack ordered a whiskey and found a quiet corner table. He was halfway through his drink when he saw her again. Lena Martinez sat alone at the bar, nursing what looked like cheap beer. Even here, he noticed, people gave her space. Jack observed her for a while. She sat with the alertness of someone who had learned to sleep with one eye open. When two drunk miners stumbled too close to her, she shifted slightly, her body language changing in a way that made the men instinctively veer away. They might not know why, but some animal part of their brains recognized a predator. Making a decision, Jack drained his glass and walked to the bar. He took the empty stool beside her. "Jack Harlow," he said simply, extending his hand. "I run the Big Sky Ranch south of here." Lena looked at his hand for a moment before shaking it. Her grip was firm but controlled, as if she was carefully measuring her strength. "Lena Martinez," she replied. "But you already knew that, didn't you? News travels fast in small colonies." Jack didn't deny it. "I hear you're looking for a place." Lena's eyes narrowed slightly. "And I hear you go through ranch hands like water. 3 ran off last month from what the barkeep says." Now it was Jack's turn to look surprised. "You've been asking about me?" "I ask about everyone," she said flatly. "Old habits." Jack nodded. He understood survival instincts. "My ranch is 200,000 acres. Toughest terrain on the planet. My hands quit because they can't handle the work or the isolation." He looked her directly in the eyes. "I don't think that would be a problem for you." Lena took a sip of her beer. "You offering me a job, Mr. Harlow?" "No," he said. "I'm offering you a deal." He laid it out for her without embellishment. Marriage. A home on his ranch, a partnership of equals. No romance, just a practical arrangement between two people who needed something from each other. "You're looking for somewhere to belong," he said. "I'm looking for someone who won't quit when things get tough. From what I hear, you're tougher than anyone on this rock." Lena studied him carefully. "Why marriage? Why not just hire me?" "Colonial law," Jack explained. "Non-citizens can't own property. If something happens to me, the ranch goes to the government unless I have family. I need someone who has a stake in making the place work, not just another hired hand." "And if I say no?" Jack shrugged. "Then I finish my drink and head back to my ranch alone. No hard feelings." Lena was silent for a long moment. "I haven't said yes to the matchmaker yet." "Good," Jack said, "because I haven't registered with her service. This is between us, no middleman. I saw you walking out of her office earlier. From the look on your face, I'm guessing she didn't have much to offer." Lena's laugh was short and without humor. "No one wants an abandoned woman with more metal than flesh in her body, Mr. Harlow." "Jack," he corrected. "And I don't care what you're made of as long as you can work. The ranch needs someone like you." He paused. "And maybe you need somewhere like the ranch." He watched as she considered his offer, weighing her options with the careful calculation of someone who had survived when others hadn't. Around them, the bar buzzed with conversation and music, but they existed in their own pocket of silence. "When would we leave?" she finally asked. "Tomorrow morning," Jack said, not showing his surprise at her quick decision. "I've got supplies to collect, then we head out. It's a 6-hour drive to the ranch." Lena nodded. "I don't have much to pack." "You won't need much," Jack told her. "The ranch house has everything we need." "I should warn you," Lena said, her voice low. "The nanites in my system, they change me sometimes, adapt to threats. I'm not always predictable." Jack considered this. "Neither are the Longhorns. Neither is this planet. I'll take my chances." He stood up and put some credits on the bar. "Meet me at the south gate at sunrise. We'll sign the papers at the admin office on the way out." Lena looked up at him, the silver flecks in her eyes catching the bar's dim light. "You're either very brave or very desperate, Jack Harlow." Jack allowed himself a small smile. "Probably both. See you at sunrise, Ms. Martinez." He left without looking back, feeling strangely satisfied. The ranch had been missing something, and perhaps he had too. Not a wife in the traditional sense, but a partner who understood what it meant to survive in hostile places. Someone who wouldn't break when things got hard. As he climbed into his truck for the night, Jack looked up at the unfamiliar stars of New Frontier. For the first time in years, he felt like he had made the right decision. Lena stood at the south gate as the twin suns of New Frontier began to rise. She carried one bag containing everything she owned, some clothes, a few tools, and a small metal box with her military tags, and a data chip holding the only pictures she had from her life before the accident. The morning air was cool and smelled of dust and the strange, spicy scent of the native plants. She saw Jack's truck approaching before she heard it. The large vehicle bounced over the uneven ground, its reinforced frame built to handle the rough terrain beyond the settlement. Jack pulled up beside her and nodded once. "Ready?" he asked as she climbed in. "Yes," Lena said simply. They drove to the administration building where a sleepy clerk processed their marriage application with barely concealed surprise. The procedure was fast and without ceremony. They signed the documents, Jack paid the fee, and within 20 minutes, Lena Martinez became Lena Harlow on all official records. Neither of them spoke much as they left the settlement behind. The truck moved steadily across the plains, following a dirt road that grew less defined the year further they traveled. Lena watched the landscape change, the tall blue-green grasses giving way to rockier ground dotted with twisted trees that looked like Earth's ancient olive trees but with dark purple leaves. "Those are called twist oaks," Jack said, breaking the silence. "Hard as iron. We use them for fence posts." Lena nodded, grateful for the simple information that required no emotional response. She was still processing the speed with which her life had changed. Yesterday she had been alone and unwanted. Today she was married and heading to a new home. "The ranch has its own power system," Jack continued. "Solar and wind. Water comes from deep wells and a river that runs through the north section. We're self-sufficient except for specialized equipment and medical supplies." "How many workers?" Lena asked. "None right now," Jack admitted. "Last group left 2 weeks ago. I've been running things alone since then." Lena raised an eyebrow. 200,000 acres alone? Jack shrugged. "Automated systems handle some of it. The Longhorns are smart enough to mostly take care of themselves. But yes, it's too much for one person. That's where you come in." The road grew steeper as they entered hill country. Jack handled the truck with the ease of long practice, navigating around boulders and across dry creek beds. About 4 hours into the journey, he stopped on a ridge and pointed ahead. "There it is. Big Sky Ranch." Lena looked where he pointed and saw a vast expanse of land spreading out below them. Rolling hills covered in the blue-green grass stretched to distant mountains. She could make out dark shapes moving across the landscape, the Longhorns. At the center of it all was a cluster of buildings beside a glittering ribbon of water. "It's bigger than I expected," she said. "Most of it is grazing land," Jack explained. "The Longhorns need space, they're territorial." He started the truck again and they descended into the valley. As they got closer, Lena could see that the main house was larger than it had appeared from a distance, built from local timber and some kind of synthetic material. It was a 2-story structure with a wide porch and large windows. Several outbuildings surrounded it, barns, equipment sheds, and what looked like a small greenhouse. Jack parked in front of the house and they got out. The air here smelled different, cleaner, with a hint of the river and the strange sweet scent of the native flowers that grew in patches near the water. "I'll show you around," Jack said, taking her bag despite her protest. Kitchen, living area, and office are on the main floor. Bedrooms upstairs. You can take the east room. It has its own bathroom. The inside of the house was surprisingly comfortable. The furniture was simple but solid, made from the local twist oak. Large windows let in natural light, and the kitchen was well equipped with modern appliances. It was clear that Jack had invested in making the ranch house livable despite its remote location. "The power system is in the basement," Jack said as they completed the tour, along with water filtration and emergency supplies. "Security perimeter extends around the main buildings and part of the nearest grazing land. It keeps out the larger predators. Predators? Lena asked. Nothing we can't handle, Jack assured her. Mostly they leave the longhorns alone unless one gets sick or injured. They're more interested in the smaller native herbivores. He showed her to her room, a spacious area with a large bed, dresser, and a window that looked out over the river. The bathroom was small but functional, with a shower and sink. Get settled, he said, putting her bag on the bed. I need to check the herd. We can discuss duties over dinner. Left alone, Lena unpacked her few belongings and sat on the bed. The mattress was firm but comfortable, the sheets clean and smelling faintly of some unfamiliar herb. She went to the window and looked out at her new home. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way, but also isolating. The nearest neighbor was probably hours away. She wondered if she had made a mistake. Then she remembered the looks in the settlement, the whispers behind her back, the rejections. At least here, her differences might be useful rather than frightening. When Jack returned, the sun was setting. Lena had explored the house more thoroughly and was in the kitchen examining the food supplies. Hope you can cook, Jack said as he washed his hands at the sink. I'm not much good at it. Basic field rations, Lena replied. Military training included survival cooking, nothing fancy. That's fine. I'm not picky. They worked together to prepare a simple meal of synthetic protein that tasted surprisingly like beef, along with some root vegetables from the greenhouse. They ate at the kitchen table, the silence between them not uncomfortable, but thoughtful. Tomorrow, I'll show you the perimeter systems, Jack said as they finished. The longhorns need checking twice a day, morning and evening. The automated feeders need maintenance every few days. The river pump sometimes clogs with debris. He looked at her directly. Can you use a rifle? Yes, Lena answered. And most other weapons. Jack nodded, unsurprised. Good. There's a weapons locker in my office. You should always carry something when you're out on the range, just in case. What else should I know? Lena asked. Jack considered the question. The days are long here, 30 hours. Takes some getting used to. Storms come up fast, especially in the dry season, which starts next month. If you hear the warning system, get inside immediately. He paused. And the longhorns? Don't show fear around them. They can sense it. Lena almost smiled at that. Fear isn't something I feel much anymore, Jack. His eyes met hers, and she saw understanding there. No, I don't suppose you do. Not after what you've been through. He stood and took their plates to the sink. We should get some rest. Dawn comes early. That night in her new room, Lena lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch. The distant lowing of the longhorns, the soft rush of the river, the creak of the house as it cooled in the night air. It was so different from the sterile silence of her escape pod, or the constant mechanical hum of the settlement. She touched the place on her arm, where she knew the nanites clustered most densely beneath her skin. They were quiet now, dormant, but she could feel them waiting. Would they be needed here? Would this place finally give her the peace she had been seeking? As she drifted towards sleep, Lena realized that for the first time since her rescue, she was looking forward to tomorrow. 2 months passed quickly on the ranch. Lena adapted to the rhythm of life there with a speed that surprised even her. The long days were filled with work that challenged her body and mind in ways that felt useful rather than threatening. Unlike the settlement where her enhanced strength had made people uncomfortable, at the ranch it was valued. She could repair fence lines that would have taken 2 normal humans to handle, and her enhanced vision let her spot sick or injured animals from a distance. Jack was a fair partner, demanding but never unreasonable. They settled into a routine, taking breakfast together before dividing the day's tasks. They would meet again for the evening meal, where they shared brief reports about their work. Their conversations were still mostly practical, but Lena began to notice small changes. Jack would sometimes mention something he had seen on his rounds that he thought might interest her, a rare flowering plant or an unusual cloud formation. She found herself sharing observations too, pointing out the behaviors of the longhorns she had noticed or a more efficient way to operate some of the ranch equipment. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set, Jack broke their comfortable silence. "The longhorns have accepted you," he said. "Faster than I expected." Lena nodded. The massive animals had been wary of her at first, but now they recognized her scent and voice. "They're smarter than they look." "Most things are," Jack replied, with the hint of a smile. It was an expression Lena had seen more frequently lately. She was about to respond when a flash of light caught her attention. "Storm coming," she said, pointing to the horizon where lightning flickered among dark clouds. Jack stood. "Big one from the look of it. We'd better secure everything." They worked quickly, moving equipment into sheds and checking the barn doors. The longhorns near the house had already started moving toward the sheltered valleys, their instincts guiding them to safety. Jack and Lena had just finished when the warning system chimed, the ranch's sensors detecting the rapid pressure drop that indicated severe weather. They made it back to the house as the first heavy raindrops began to fall. Within minutes, the storm hit with full force. Wind howled around the building and rain lashed the windows. Lightning split the sky in jagged patterns, followed by thunder that shook the house. Jack moved through the rooms, checking the storm shutters. Lena went to the basement to make sure the power systems were protected. When she returned to the main floor, she found Jack in the kitchen making hot drinks. "Power grid is secure," she reported, taking the mug he offered. "Backup systems are ready if we need them." Jack nodded. "Good. These storms can last a while. We might lose main power before it's over." They sat at the kitchen table, watching the storm through the windows. The security system displayed feeds from cameras positioned around the property, showing bent trees and flooded lowlands. "The river will overflow its banks," Jack said, checking one of the feeds. "But the house is high enough. We've weathered worse." Lena was silent, her attention drawn to something on one of the displays. "Jack, look at the north fence line." Jack leaned closer to the screen. Through the rain, they could see dark shapes, moving along the property edge. "Razorbacks," he said grimly. "The storm must have driven them down from the hills." Razorbacks were one of the more dangerous native predators, pack hunters with armored hides and sharp tusks. They normally avoided the ranch, but the storm might have made them desperate. "Will they go after the longhorns?" Lena asked. "They might if they're hungry enough, but the perimeter fence should stop them." Jack's words were barely out of his mouth when the display flickered and went dark. A moment later, the house lights dimmed briefly. "Power surge," he muttered. "Not good." The security system rebooted, but when the displays came back online, one of the feeds showed a section of fence sparking and then going dark. "Lightning strike," Jack said, standing quickly. "It's taken out part of the north fence." He moved to the office where he kept the weapons locker. "I need to get out there and fix it before the Razorbacks get through." Lena followed him. "You can't go out in this storm alone." "We can't wait," Jack argued, checking a rifle. "If those Razorbacks get to the herd, we could lose dozens of animals." "I'll go with you," Lena said firmly. Jack looked like he wanted to object, but instead nodded. "Grab a rifle and wear the heavy rain gear. It's in the storage room." 10 minutes later, they were in Jack's truck, fighting their way through the storm. The vehicle's heavy tires gripped the muddy ground as Jack drove toward the damaged section of fence. The windshield wipers worked at maximum speed, barely keeping the glass clear enough to see through. They reached the north fence line and saw the problem immediately. A lightning strike had hit one of the power nodes, shorting out a 50-meter section of the electrified fence. Through the rain, they could see dark shapes moving on the other side, the Razorbacks testing the barrier. "I'll fix the node," Jack shouted over the storm. "You keep watch. If they start coming through, fire a warning shot first." "They don't like loud noises." Lena nodded, raising her rifle. They got out of the truck, instantly drenched despite their protective gear. Jack moved to the damaged node while Lena positioned herself where she could watch both him and the fence line. The Razorbacks were more visible now. 6 large creatures with armored backs and tusks that curved forward from their jaws. They paced along the fence, sensing the weakness in the barrier. One of them pushed at the wire, testing its strength. Lena felt a familiar sensation spreading through her body. The nanites in her system were responding to the potential threat, enhancing her already modified muscles and sharpening her senses. Her vision adjusted to the darkness, the razorbacks now clearly visible to her even through the heavy rain. Jack worked quickly, replacing the damaged components in the node. "Almost there," he called to Lena. "Just need to reset the—" His words were cut off as one of the razorbacks charged the fence, breaking through the unpowered section. Two others followed immediately. Lena fired a warning shot. The sound cracked through the storm, causing two of the creatures to hesitate. But the lead razorback continued toward Jack, who was still focused on the repair. Without thinking, Lena dropped the rifle and ran. The nanites surged through her system, pushing her body beyond normal human limits. She reached the razorback just as it was about to attack Jack, grabbing it by its armored neck and throwing it aside with enhanced strength. The creature rolled but quickly regained its footing, turning to face her with an angry howl. "Get down!" Jack shouted from behind her. Lena dropped to the ground as he fired his rifle. The shot hit the razorback in its less protected underbelly, and the creature fell. Lena was on her feet again instantly, picking up a broken fence post and facing the other two razorbacks. The nanites had fully activated now, silver lines visible beneath her skin as they rerouted her body's resources for combat. The razorbacks seemed to sense the change in her, hesitating in their advance. Jack fired again, wounding one of them. The injured creature retreated, followed by its companion. They disappeared into the storm, heading away from the ranch. The fence power came back on suddenly, the repaired node sending electricity through the wires once more. Jack lowered his rifle and turned to Lena, rain streaming down his face. "You," he began, staring at her glowing silver tracery beneath her skin. "Are you all right?" Lena nodded, feeling the nanites beginning to power down now that the threat had passed. "Yes, the modifications. They sometimes activate like this when there's danger." Jack stepped closer, looking at her with concern rather than fear. "You saved my life. You would have done the same," Lena said simply. The storm passed by morning, leaving behind flooded lowlands and scattered debris. Lena woke early and went to check the damage. The ranch had weathered the storm well enough, but there would be plenty of repair work to do. As she walked the grounds, she noticed Jack already out by the barn, examining a damaged roof section. Something had changed between them since the incident with the razorbacks 3 weeks ago. Jack no longer seemed surprised by her enhanced abilities. Instead, he had begun asking practical questions about what she could do, how the nanites worked, and what their limitations were. His curiosity was refreshing after the fear and suspicion she had encountered in the settlement. "Morning," Jack called as she approached. "Thought you might sleep in after yesterday." Yesterday had been particularly demanding. A group of longhorns had broken through an inner fence and wandered into a boggy area. It had taken them both all day to get the animals out safely. "Nanites helped me recover quickly," Lena explained. "How bad is the damage?" "Could be worse," Jack said, pointing to the roof. "Just need to replace a few panels. The greenhouse lost some glass, though." They spent the morning making repairs, working together with the easy rhythm they had developed over the past 3 months. By midday, they had fixed the most urgent problems and were taking a break on the porch with water and some dried fruit from their stores. "Supply truck should come tomorrow," Jack said. Assuming the storm didn't wash out the road. The ranch received monthly deliveries of items they couldn't produce themselves: specialized equipment parts, medical supplies, and luxury foods. Lena had begun looking forward to these deliveries as a small connection to the wider world. She was about to respond when something caught her eye. A flash of light in the sky, too bright and too steady to be a star or atmospheric phenomenon. "Jack," she said, pointing. "Look." Jack followed her gaze. "That's not a transport ship," he said after a moment. "Wrong configuration." Lena felt the nanites stirring in her system, responding to the slight increase in her heart rate. Not Colonial Patrol either. The movement pattern is all wrong. They watched as the light grew larger, clearly heading toward the planet. Then, it split into multiple points of light, at least a dozen smaller craft breaking away from what must be a larger ship. Could be a new settlement group, Jack suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. Lena shook her head. The colony would have announced new arrivals, and they wouldn't approach like this spread out in attack formation. Jack looked at her sharply. Attack? That's a military insertion pattern, Lena said, her old training coming back. Designed to overcome planetary defenses by presenting multiple targets. The ranch's communication system suddenly came to life, an emergency broadcast from the settlement. Attention. All colonists, a tense voice announced. We are tracking multiple unidentified craft entering our atmosphere. They have not responded to hails and appear to be hostile. All outlying settlements should prepare for possible contact. Colonial defense forces are mobilizing, but response times to remote areas will be delayed. Repeat, all colonists should... The message cut off abruptly. Jack and Lena exchanged a look of concern. We're on our own, Jack said grimly. Lena nodded. At least for now. How many weapons do you have? Not enough for what's coming, Jack replied, looking back at the sky where the lights were now clearly visible as ships. But we should get what we have ready. They hurried to the house. Jack opened the weapons locker in his office while Lena checked the security systems. The perimeter fence isn't designed to stop anything that flies, she reported. And our defenses are meant for local predators, not whatever this is. Here. Jack handed her a pulse rifle, more advanced than the simple projectile weapons they used for the Razorbacks. Military grade. I keep it for emergencies. Lena examined the weapon, impressed. Where did you get this? I wasn't always a rancher, Jack said simply. They didn't have time to discuss it further. The security system alerted them to fast-moving objects approaching the ranch. On the displays, they could see 3 small craft descending toward their land. They're targeting isolated settlements first, Lena realized, picking off the easy targets before hitting the main colony. Jack checked the rifle's charge. What do you suggest? You're the one with military experience, Lena thought quickly. We can't match their firepower, but we might be able to use the land to our advantage. The Longhorns, too. They're territorial and aggressive when threatened. They quickly formed a plan. Jack would use the ranch's systems to herd the nearest Longhorns toward the likely landing area, while Lena would attempt to disable any craft that landed with the pulse rifle. If things went bad, they would retreat to the house, which had a reinforced storm shelter beneath it. They moved outside, taking cover behind the barn as the alien craft grew closer. Now they could see that the ships were unlike any human design. Smooth, dark shapes with no visible engines or weapons, yet clearly moving with purpose. I've never seen technology like that, Jack said quietly. Neither have I, Lena admitted. The nanites in her system were fully active now, preparing her body for combat. She could feel them enhancing her muscles, sharpening her vision, increasing her reaction time. One of the craft landed about half a kilometer from the ranch house, in an open area usually used for sorting the Longhorns. The other 2 remained, hovering as if standing guard. A panel slid open on the landed craft and figures emerged, tall, thin humanoids in what appeared to be armored suits. They look almost human, Jack whispered. But they're not, Lena said. Something about the way they moved, too fluid and yet too precise, told her these were not humans or any known species. Jack activated the ranch's sound system, which was normally used to help guide the Longhorns. A low, rumbling frequency began to play, the sound that signaled danger to the modified cattle. In the distance, they could see the nearest herd beginning to move, the massive animals turning toward the sound with their heads lowered aggressively. The aliens seemed to notice the approaching herd. They raised devices that were clearly weapons, pointing them toward the oncoming Longhorns. Now, Lena said, raising the pulse rifle and taking careful aim at the alien craft. She fired 3 quick shots. The first 2 hit the craft's hull with little visible effect, but the third struck what must have been a sensitive area. The ship shuddered, and its hovering became unstable. The aliens turned toward their position, weapons raised. Energy blasts struck the ground near them, sending dirt and grass flying. Move, Jack shouted, pulling Lena toward better cover as return fire hit where they had been standing. The Longhorns reached the aliens at that moment, charging in with surprising speed for such large animals. The aliens fired at them, downing 2, but the rest of the herd continued their attack, driven by territorial instinct and genetic programming. In the confusion, Lena targeted the aliens themselves, picking off 2 with precise shots from the pulse rifle. The remaining aliens retreated toward their damaged craft, firing wildly at both the humans and the Longhorns. "They're calling for backup," Lena said, spotting one alien making gestures toward the hovering craft. "We need to move." They ran toward the house, keeping low. Behind them, one of the hovering craft descended, firing energy weapons that cut through the Longhorns and set the grass ablaze. "The house won't hold them for long," Jack said as they reached the porch. Lena looked at him, a decision forming in her mind. "No, but it might buy enough time. The colony needs to know what they're facing." She handed him the pulse rifle. "Get to the shelter. It's shielded, right?" Jack frowned. "Yes, but what are you—" "I'm going to try something," Lena said. "The nanites in my system, they can interface with technology. If I can connect to the ranch's communication array, I might be able to boost the signal enough to reach the settlement, warn them." "That's suicide," Jack protested. "You said yourself the nanites have limits." Lena looked toward the approaching aliens, then back at Jack. "Maybe, but it's our best chance." She took his hand briefly. "Thank you for giving me a home, Jack, even if it was just for a little while." Before he could stop her, she ran toward the communication tower behind the house. The nanites were fully active now, silver lines glowing visibly beneath her skin, as they prepared for what she was about to attempt. "Lena," Jack called after her. "You're my wife now, remember? That means you don't get to sacrifice yourself." He raised the rifle and began providing covering fire, taking down another alien. As Lena reached the tower,